Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another 4chan Stories video. You guys have been loving these stories and just the 4chan videos in general so much, and I'll keep making them as long as you guys keep watching them. So please comment down below if you'd like to see more of these 4chan videos in the future. And yeah, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate every single one of you. And we're going to get into some horrifying 4chan stories in this video. They're super great, super scary. I loved every single one of these stories in this video. Super entertaining. You won't regret stopping by and listening. I appreciate all of you, and please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It's the channel's goal to be at 500,000 subscribers, so please subscribe to the channel. And yeah, all right, without further ado, let's get into some horrifying 4chan stories. I just got back from a job I had in Alaska about 2 months ago. I figure it makes a good story, even though it scared the shit out of me at the time. Be me, working as a radio technician, moving across the country semi-regularly to fill jobs, get a contract to work at an unmanned radio station in Alaska. The flight is paid for and there are supplies on site. There was a room for lodging, otherwise I'd have to pay for a hotel in the nearby town, which was a few miles away. I already didn't like the sound of a radio station in the Alaskan wilderness, miles from any civilization with less than enough workers, but despite this, I accepted the contract because it paid more than any job I'd taken before, and not having to pay for a hotel and for food was a big plus. I've been instructed to take a gun with me on the trip, preferably a rifle that shot a large caliber. I ended up taking my Marlin 336W in 30-30 Winchester and taking an old shitty 22 I had with me for plinking. For your sake as a reader, and to shorten this story by about 3,000 words, I won't go into boarding the plane, getting the guns registered for travel, or establishing residency in Alaska. We landed in Fairbanks. The radio station itself was in the middle of nowhere. They greatly underplayed how isolated this place was. It's southeast of Fairbanks, tucked in between the lower part of Donnelly Dome and the Macaw Plateau. The landscape is very hilly, mountainous, and rough. Most of all, though, it's cold as hell. Drive just over 2 hours and 107 miles from Fairbanks to Fort Greely. Charter a AS-350 Airbus helicopter to take me and my luggage to the closest inhabited area to the radio station. Hike with a local guide about 10 miles across tough and snowy terrain to the radio station. Guide stays there for the evening because a storm is setting in. While I got situated there, the guide, other staff, and I got acquainted. There was Kevin, the groundskeeper / janitor, who had grown up nearby in Delta Junction. He was 17 and was going off to college soon. Apparently, this was one reason the place was undermanned. The pay was over minimum wage, and beside from the technicians, all the jobs were entry level. Kids would work there during the summer and leave when they went to college. There was the guide, whose name I didn't catch, but a few of the others seemed to be familiar with. He was 30-ish and was one of 8 or so local mountaineering / hiking guides. There was also Nathan, a 20-year-old guy saving up to move to Anchorage with his girlfriend. He was the other radio technician. There was supposed to be another employee, but they stopped showing up about a month prior to my arrival. Put my stuff in the lodging room, go out to talk with the others and get a bite to eat. Enter the main room, notice that the guide is gone. Hey, where did the guide go? Nathan looked over to me. Oh, he just decided to leave since it was getting late. You just let him go during a storm? He insisted, said something about having to get home as soon as he could. I'm sure he's fine. He's a guide. He knows these mountains better than the bears do. I wasn't totally okay with this, but I decided Nathan was right and to not make an argument out of it. It bugged me from the beginning that a guide as knowledgeable as he was to just up and leave in a hurry during a storm. The bad news came about a week later. I've been doing my jobs as I normally would anywhere else, just the heavier clothing and occasional trips outside to restart the heater located in a mini shed near the station. The bad news, as you might guess, was about the guide. He had been found half a mile from the start of the trail leading up to the station. He had been partially eaten, but it was unclear by what or how he actually died. This spooked us enough that Kevin asked me and Nathan to teach him how to load, fire, and maintain a gun just in case. We spent a few evenings going over the basics. I let him carry around my shitty 22 as well. We all started carrying guns with us when we had to go outside and just around the station in general. Nathan had brought his 20 gauge M2 Benelli, It didn't completely ease the tension, but it made us feel safer. We got faxed documents saying that an officer would come up to talk with us about the guide's death. A week passed, then another, then another. Repeating this process, it had eventually been 4 weeks and some days since the officer was supposed to be here. We weren't supposed to use the radio equipment for anything besides broadcasting the intended content, but we figured this was important enough to bend the rules. We got in contact with a local police station. Apparently, they couldn't locate a guide to assist an officer up to the station. They had sent one officer, but he hadn't reported back. They said that a blizzard was moving in and would be here within days. We told them what we knew about the guide before his death over the radio. They instructed us to stay put and wait out the storm. They told us to keep an open channel with them for as long as possible. 2 days passed, and at around 2:30 in the morning, we lost contact with the police station. I work until 10 a.m. trying to get in contact with them. No luck. Kevin uses his ancient Nokia brick to call a local town's municipal center. His reception is shit. Every other call results in the "call cannot be completed as dialed" message. Get in contact with local government workers. Ask them to get in contact with the police station and let them know we're fine. Also, ask them to get into contact with the contracting company. Nathan was ready to jump ship, and to be honest, I was too. For about 3 days, we were stuck like that. Not able to broadcast, little contact with the outside world. I remember that day that we got the message, like it was mere hours ago to this day. I've been trying to get some sleep during the storm since we couldn't do our normal duties anyway. I was shaken awake by Nathan, who told me to get up and come with him. When I finally came to my senses and saw why he was so worried, the power is off. Not just the heat, the power. I get up and come into the main room where Kevin is sitting, wrapped in 2 heavy blankets and a puffy jacket. He has the .22 on the table, invisibly loaded. "What's going on?" I asked. "Power went out a few minutes ago. We heard something outside too. I loaded your rifle for you." My Marlin was sitting on the table next to a box of .30. "What did you hear?" "Scraping. It sounded like something was trying to claw itself inside. Probably just an animal. I'll go out and get the heater running." I went to the door with my rifle in hand. Open door. Snow falls into the doorway and the door slammed back, closed by the wind. Fuck. We decided to wait out the storm the best we could, but we had to get warmer. Nathan and Kevin tried to start a fire while I gathered blankets, jackets, and any cloth or tarp I could. I found about 5 blankets in total, as well as a few towels and a tarp. We huddled around the small fire, and about 4 hours later, the power returned. We assumed that this meant the storm died down a little, so once again, I made my way to the door with my rifle. I opened it a bit, and a bit of snow fell in, but the door wasn't blown shut immediately. I walked out, trudging through multiple feet of snow. By the time I got to the shed, I was out of breath. I swung open the door to find the heater already running. Fuck. All that for nothing. I'm halfway back to the station when I feel it. That horrible sensation of being watched. I ran towards the station. As I neared the station, I picked up on a horrible smell, a musky smell, like a dog's hot breath. I bumbled into the door. "What the fuck is that smell?" I asked. I slammed the door shut. "I don't smell anything." I opened the door. "It must be out here then. Come smell it." "Dude, close the door, it's cold." The smell drafted into the station and cut off his sentence. Nathan and Kevin began coughing and gagging. I closed the door thinking it would help. The air felt thick, like physically heavier than air is supposed to be. I began gagging uncontrollably. After about a minute of hell, it finally subsided as the ventilation system filtered it out. It lingered for days and never really went away entirely. We checked back with the people Kevin had called. No luck getting in contact with the contracting company. They did help us establish a connection with the police station. They said that the officer they sent up was still not back and presumed lost in the storm. We requested help to get out of there. We still had enough food and water for another 2 months. We asked about the possibility of a search and rescue team coming to get us. We only received a 1-word response. Unlikely. We had packed our stuff by the door and got ready to sleep for the night. That night I woke up with a harsh chill going through my body. I opened my eyes to see that there was snow everywhere, on the floor, on my bed, on me, all over the room. The door to the room was open, which I distinctly remember closing. I got up and ran into the main room. The front door was wide open, and I noticed that one of our packs was gone. I knew it was Kevin's because his was the closest to the door. My pack, which was next to Kevin's, had a large tear down the middle. It was a rough and uneven tear about the size of a bear's paw. There was some sticky black residue on the bag as well, which smelled like rot and musk, combined in a horrible symphony of odors. I slammed the door shut and turned on the lights. I went to wake up Nathan and Kevin. Nathan woke up instantly when I shook him awake, but Kevin's eyes were froze shut. We spent the morning putting hot waters on his eye and eventually got them open. He could see for the most part, but he complained of his eyes being freezing cold to the point of pain, despite the rest of his body being warm, even hours after they had been open and warmed up. The next 2 days were pretty uneventful. Eventually, a team consisting of a police officer and 2 local mountaineering specialists came to pick us up. We were hesitant to tell them about the weird things that had happened to us, but eventually they inquired about our time there, and we told them. They said that they got reports like that from people working at the station fairly often. They told us that they had never really had any reason to go up there, and that it was just some kids getting spooked by their own shadow, but that this was the worst it had ever been. Even after we left that place, that whole ordeal wasn't entirely over. We of course had to speak to the police about everything, mostly about the missing people, but they wanted to know everything else as well. We ended up staying there for another month because of the police investigation and because we had technically breached our contract with the contracting company and the broadcasting company. The contractors dropped all charges, and we and the broadcasting company settled out of court. Even after coming home, some weird things go on that are directly related to this whole thing. If I ever tell the story, whether that be online or in person, my dogs always act up if they are with me. Even when I'm not home, my neighbors, without fail, tell me that my dogs made a lot of noise. That could be a coincidence or them trying to spook me, but I guess anything is possible. Alright guys, here's one that happened a few summers ago. Live out near Texarkana. Parents have farm with a few cows, horses, and too many chickens to count. Farm sits on the boundary between woods and plains. Trees are sparse but thicken up like crazy towards the back of our property. Parents gone to Corpus Christi for vacation, so of course I have to take care of all the animals. Tack the heat wave passing through on that, and it's basically constant care making sure they're all watered. Closest friends are out of town for the week. Farm is about 20 miles outside of city limits, so I can rule getting my dick wet out of the roster of activities. Split time up between feeding chickens and animals and sighting in my new SIG 556 I got for graduation. Wake up one morning. One of our older horses had died. She had plenty of water, but the heat must have been too much for her. Poor girl. I phoned Dad. He tells me to go to neighbor Frank a few miles down the road. He has a backhoe. Go to Frank, tell him my situation. He follows me back home with the thing and fills me in on how to operate. Not too different from a tractor, so I'm set. Tells me he'll be back the next morning for the backhoe. Set to work digging Empress's grave. Fill it in, offer a moment of silence, shed a manly tear. Turn the backhoe back on and chug a lug to the back of the property. 30 plus acres and not a single berm for shooting. Madness. Don't bother telling parents because they wouldn't give a fuck. Start digging a berm. Leave the trench for a side. Suddenly smell this dank, shitty odor. Panic and think I hit a sewer line. Hop down out of cab and search the trench for busted pipe, none to be found. Sudden feel uneasy, feeling of being unwatched. Scan tree line and surrounding field. Zip. Chalk it up to dead horse and residual guilt, but still tactically back to backhoe. Glad I left it running. Chug a lug back to farm. Turn it off and head inside. Get up early next morning, make a big country breakfast, and go out to feed some motherfucking critters. Go out to do the horse's routine, but with one last chunk of hay on the wheelbarrow. Sad face. Suddenly waft a most unpleasant vapor. That smelly smell from yesterday mixed with rot. Head out on a hunch to where I buried Empress. Stagger and nearly puke. The grave's been robbed. Her head had been placed, emphasis on placed upright, near a largest hole in the ground. Tongue has been ripped out, eyelids gone, and eyes been popped. Her cheeks and neck look chewed on, maggots crawling around the wounds. Virtuous humor dry and crusty running down one cheek. Seen dead animals and scavenging before. This trumps all in my book. Plus, I love that horse, so this is disturbing on a number of levels. Hear squealing sound behind me, break my shorts. It's neighbor Frank. He asks why I look so pale. Tell him coyotes dug her up, the horse. Bullshit. I dug that grave at least 7 feet deep. He nods and leaves with backhoe. I play car shuffle again to get him back to his truck. Get home, carefully tip Empress's head back down the grave with a shovel and rebury her. Go into the garage, slop some coyote urine around grave to keep the fuckers away. It pays to have a family as into hunting as mine. Fast forward to that afternoon. Head out on a four-wheeler with a few targets, my SIG and my moist nugget, trashy, yes, cheap, also yes, for a little sight calibration. Go to set up targets, realize I didn't bring anything to actually set them up on. Punch self. Go into trees to grab some sticks. As I approach, get the same feeling as the day before. Go into trees, grab some suitable sticks, and do the nope scoot back to my site. Whittle sticks into stakes, makeshift a few targets into the side of the berm, get my SIG calibrated to within acceptable parameters, and operate on the clean target for a few minutes with a nugget. After a while, I realize it's getting dark. Is the beer there any good? Believe it or not, I wasn't really into underage drinking, and that was just a comment by somebody, so yeah, I just read that. And then continuing on to the story. Decide to take targets and shit down, clean up my brass, and head back. Leave no trace. As I'm taking the targets down, the afternoon breeze shifts and suddenly stank. Hear movement from other side of berm and nearly nope a small but sturdy wall in my pants. Decide not to be a pussy, grab my SIG, and climb the berm to have a little peek. See medium-sized black shape huddled down in the trench. Aren't you cute? .jpg. Figure it's a black bear cub or something. They're more common than most folks realize, and back away slowly in case mama's nearby. Clumsily, handedly, accidentally a shower of dirt onto the cub. It looks up at me. There's no cub. Let me just say that while I'm not the original badass, creepy, or spooky images, and shit don't frighten me that easily. Shit, when I was little, one of my favorite pets was Delightful, an older Welsh pony with no eyes. Her eye holes were, in fact, sewn over and sunken in. She made one of my friends cry just by looking at him. That being said, this thing was on a completely other level. Spectrum, instead of physics, that from that sweet old pony. Best way I can describe it is comparing it to Pick related. Jaw was a bit thinner, eyes were beadier and darker, and the nose was more sunken back, but the rest of the details were pretty close. Same drooly mouth, same slack-jawed grin, same snarkly-ass teeth. At this point, my brain made an executive order to re-examine my previous decisions. Fuck the targets, fuck the brass, fuck the scouts, fuck not being a pussy, and fuck slow going. I tactically went back to my ATV, spent 0.00001 of a second making sure my guns are stowed securely, and gunned that shit back to the garage. Once inside with a good 8 acres between me and the fuck beast of Peculiar, I realized that I have a sworn duty to protect my farm. I already let one of my charges die under my watch. It's time to nut up or shut up. Cue arming sequence.avi. Grab my dad's tack vest, have to clinch it tight, and his Night Owl 5X. Load up 3 20-round AR-15 mags loaded with 5.56 NATO. Slap the third into my SIG and sling my new gun over my shoulder. My nugget tates mags, so I put one in with 5 to spare on my vest and shoulder that bad boy. Fuck me, I even slipped a knife into my boot. There are floodlights strung up around the farm for entertaining or night work. Switches are in the garage and balcony. Go for high ground. I tactically thought the house to the balcony and got ready for war. Not a moment too soon, start hearing squawks and gurgles, and I still get the gibbles to say this, laughter coming from the chicken pen. Fuck this. I slam every switch and light up the farmyard like Rockefeller Square on Christmas. There it is, standing in the pen like Pick related. Its body was shaped like a fucking koosh ball, all matte black fur. Arms and legs were thin, but looked powerful and wiry. It was holding one of the hens with its head torn off and staring straight at me. It was obviously a male of whatever the fuck species it was, and there was fucking blood hanging off its shitty beast cock. I unslung my SIG and mag dumped. not worrying about hitting anything, trying to hit that black cotton ball of stilts. I remember thinking, I hope I blow your shitty cock off, you piece of slime. Yes, the words my brain used were piece of slime. I scored at least 5 or 6 good thwucks, my target being only about 50 yards down range. It never moved the entire time, puffs of fur flying off of it. I ejected the mag, slapped a new one in, and took aim again. I'll never forget the look it gave me, framed by that green sight. It almost said, "Are you done?" I squeezed off a final shot at its fucking mouth. I hit it. I fucking know I hit it. I remember it almost in slow motion, the puff of fucking saliva and shit as my 5.56 NATO round introduced itself to the face at 3,000 feet per second. The thing started wheezing, like a rusty gate being swung back and forth. That kind of sound. It dropped the hen and stepped over the chicken fence. I swear to fuck that this thing has either retractable legs or its body is mostly puffy fur, because when it stepped over the fence, that leg almost disappeared. I wasn't going to let it get run away. Mag dump 2, the re-dumpeting. I didn't score any hits though. Once it was over the fence, it dropped to all fours and scuttled off like some giant spider back to the crack in Satan's crouch, all while wheezing that noise. I stayed up all that night, waiting for it to come back. Fed the animals with my cig over my shoulder, went to sleep, repeated the process until my parents came home. Never saw the chicken fucking shit weasel again. So, what's your take? Well, I guess I should go ahead and finally tell my story. It's not very K-like, to be honest. It's not in a woods. I have no funds at the time. There are no skinwalkers / goatmen / flesh gates involved, as far as I know anyways, but I feel compelled to finally getting around to writing the out, just for the record, and maybe so you guys can get some spoops out of it. Back when I was 17, I lived just outside of Washington, D.C. I enjoyed it well enough for the most part. D.C. is no fun and has a massive homeless problem, but isn't a complete shithole. I was a complete autist in school with depression and shit, and I got kicked out of my nice Catholic prep school due to shit grades. Instead of sending me to public school over in Virginia, where I lived, my parents decided to send me to a non-traditional school in the city. In addition to school, I had a job at a shitty movie theater in Rockville, which is just outside DC to the northwest. Now, I was 17 at the time, but had no driver's license. When I was able to get my learner's permit at 15, I procrastinated due to not wanting to go to the DMV for a whole year. When I finally did get my permit, I did my hours and my driving course and such, but fell into the same trap of not wanting to go to the DMV, so I didn't get my license until I was almost 18. So because of this, and because my parents rightfully didn't want to drive me into DC every day during rush hour, only to then have to go back into Virginia to get to work, I took the metro to school and work every day. If there are any Washingtonians here, then you might understand my route. I started out on the Virginia side of the Potomac River to the east of the city at Virginia Square / GMU Station, which is on the Orange Line. For the purposes of this story, the Orange Line starts in Virginia and ends just outside of DC to the northeast, and the Red Line starts out northwest, where my job was, and then went down into the center of DC and up to the northeast again. My school is about a block away from the Eastern Market Metro Station on the Orange Line, about 3/4 of a mile southeast from the Capitol along Pennsylvania Avenue. My job was a little ways away from the Rockville Metro Station. When my shift ended at around 11:15, I had to book it to the Metro stop most days. Stations close at 12 Sunday through Thursdays, and take the Red Line down to Metro Station, which, as the name suggests, is the central DC. Switch to the Orange Line, then take the Orange Line to East Falls Church in Virginia, from which I would take the bus or a cab home. I'll put it all in a map I'll make and post along with this. Sorry, a whole post of this is just setup. The setup is important. So, now that all that is established, I can start getting into the story. For a couple months, everything was completely unremarkable. I had hidden the metro on and off for most of my life, but never this extensively, so I was fine with the whole experience. The only part that ever felt weird to me was coming home at night. During the weekends, even at like 1 a.m., people were on the metro, but during the week when I came home from work, it was very common for me to be the only person on the train and sometimes even the only person in the entire station, though I wasn't really spooked by it, at least for a while. I always sat up front in the train, like the very front. I liked looking out the front of the train and watching the tracks go by. I loved doing this as a kid, and I still did because I was a child, even at 17. One night, I was riding the Red Line back from Rockville to Metro Center. I was the only person in the car, probably in the train. I caught the last train before the system closed. I was looking out the front of the train like usual when I saw something weird. It looked like a white branch, like birch or something. It was thin, almost spindly. It was pressed up against the wall when I first saw it. As the train's headlights started to hit it, I thought it must have been a length of wire or pipe. But then it moved. It was really quick, not even like twitchy quick. It just suddenly moved out of the edge of the headlights of the train, and I couldn't see it anymore. I wrote it off in my head as being overworked, as cliche as that is. After all, tending to a popcorn machine on a pretty much empty movie theater is hard work. I pretty much forgot about the incident over the course of the week due to school and such occupying my mind. And then, about a week later, I saw it again, in about the same place on the line. This time, it was on the opposite end of the tunnel, and I got to see a little bit more of this thing before it moved away. It was connected to something bigger, like a leg connected to a body, which is what immediately conjured up in my mind. As the train's headlights hit it, it moved away with the same agility, but this time, about 10 seconds later, I saw it again, and it did the same thing. And then, a few days later, it happened again. This time, all I saw was what looked like a foot before whatever it was scampered off into the darkness. At this point, I was freaking the fuck out. I felt that terrible, deep-seated desire to know more start to grow. I started to be vigilant for the weird leg anytime I was on my way home from work. I would see it more and more often over time. Sometimes I would see a little more of that leg. Sometimes I would even see two of the legs, but it would always scamper into the darkness as soon as the light from the train hit it. Sometimes I would see it a few times during one ride, sometimes not. I started trying to record whatever it was. I would take a notepad with me and record between which stops I would see it, how much of it I saw, and if I saw it repeatedly. At one point, it occurred to me to ask the train operator if he saw anything. So one night, after I got off at East Falls Church, I quickly asked the operator up front if he ever saw anything weird when he drove the trains at night. I tried not to be a spurg about it, but he seemed on edge when I asked him, even though he replied with a simple nah. Things continued like this for a while, and seeing the thing almost became part of my routine of getting home. I wasn't scared of it anymore, not really, since I was in a fast-moving metal missile and the thing never seemed to be hostile or anything. Things just continued to go about the same path. Until one night, shit got fucking real. I was riding on the train, and I was waiting for the leg to show up, but it didn't. I had seen it every day for the past 2 weeks, but there was nothing tonight. I was thinking to myself something along the lines of being sad that the 2-week streak was coming to a close when I saw them. 2 glints in the darkness. My eyes at this point had gotten so used to spotting things in the darkness due to months of spotting this thing in addition to years of playing Twitch shooters, so I saw them there and I knew they weren't normal, but I still tried to rationalize it, even after months of spotting a leg in the metro tunnels. But then they blinked. It was unmistakable that it was a blink that had occurred. I jumped so hard I nearly pulled a muscle in my leg. I could tell that those eyes I saw were entirely black. Black and beady, like the eyes of a rat. Suddenly, my fear for the thing in the dark was renewed. I was on the edge for the rest of the ride to Metro Center. Though I still felt safe inside the train, I was realizing the gravity of the situation. There was something in the dark of the tunnels of the metro, and it had taken enough of an interest in me to show up almost daily. That thought followed me to Metro Center. Ironically, I felt safer in the station than I did on the train due to the simple fact that I had never seen anything weird in the stations. I got to Metro Center, got off the train, and waited for my next train. It was then I started hearing it. A soft pitter-patter, not unlike that of a rodent scurrying across the floor. I became on edge again. The noise started getting louder, and I started to shit myself more at the point where it started actually sounding like human footsteps. I said fuck it to myself and turned around towards the tunnel where my train had come from. I shouldn't have. It was there, not just a leg or eyes. The thing in its entirety. And it wasn't in the tunnel anymore. It was on the platform with me. That thing is something I will never forget. It was like a person, but warped to the point where almost all traces of humanity were gone. It was thin, horribly thin, emaciated. I could see how its pallid, gray flesh wrapped around its bones, not even covering the holes in some of its legs and arm bones. It was hunched over, not on all fours, but hunched over like an elderly person, with its legs crumpled down and its arms held in front of its chest like how a prairie dog holds its arms when it stands up. Its head was completely hairless and was hung down so I couldn't make out its face. I opened my mouth to scream, but I just whimpered like a baby. I shouldn't have done that. I think I provoked it. It started to move towards me with a horrible gait. It stayed in its hunched over position, low to the ground, but its legs extended out and it took long strides forward, like crouch walking. Its legs wobbled and twitched with each step towards me. It was obvious this thing wasn't used to walking like this, that it was better suited to crawling along the walls. As it came closer, I started to smell it. It had the pungent, rancid odor of trash in the city. My eyes started to water as it got closer. Speaking of which, it was closing the gap fast. When I first turned around, there must have been about 150 feet between us, but within 5 or 6 steps, it was only about half that distance away. My stupid brain finally kicked in and put me into survival mode, and I fucking booked it across the platform. My stupid idea was to try and outrun it by the end of the platform, then jump across the tracks to the other platform and keep running out towards the surface. My plan got about a quarter of the way done when I realized it wasn't going to work, because that's when the thing stretched out. I looked over my shoulder and shit myself again. The thing was now standing on its legs and had its arms out. I don't know how I only managed to see as much as I did in the tunnel, but what I saw in there wasn't accurately representing the whole thing. It must have been 15 feet tall at least. Its torso was thinner than its femur. Its arms came down to its shins as it let them drag along, and then there was its face. Its face looked like that of a starving man, with sallow skin tightly wrapping its cheekbones like a corset. Its eye sockets were far too big for its beady little eyes, with the top of the socket jutting out of a good 2 inches beyond where the eye ended. In the mouth was a gaping hole with no jaw to be seen. This thing had reached its full height, and I had just about made my peace with death when some beautiful motherfucker honked the horn of his train that was coming in downstairs to signify to no one that no one could get on. I don't know why, but that horn caused the monstrosity in front of me to reel backwards and let out the most horrible sound I've ever heard before going down on all fours and scuttling back into the tunnel. I took a cab home that night, and then pretty much every night for the rest of the year. I haven't gone on the metro there since. I've moved farther into Virginia, so I haven't been around Washington, but even if I was back there, I wouldn't take the metro again if it meant losing $1 trillion or whatever. I did some more research. Apparently, there are urban myths of something in the tunnels down there. I also found out about a series of abandoned tunnels just under DuPont Circle, the metro stop nearest to which I commonly saw the thing. That's pretty much it. Here's a map of where I saw the thing with stations where I was near when I saw it marked and areas to avoid marked. And alright, I like that story. I haven't really left my opinion on the previous few stories, but I like this one because it was believable, but, you know, a little bit weird towards the end with the stretching and the fast-paced stuff, but definitely creepy. And take a look at the map. Pretty interesting stuff. Let me know what you think about this one down below. Yeah, I enjoyed that one. On to the next one. Amazed that someone didn't post it yet, and countless of K Nope threads I've been in. Comes from very first K Nope thread. Heading for in the woods with a bunch of mates somewhere in Northern Europe. We decided to hike to this old abandoned Cold War era military facility. Reached the facility after 2 days of hiking. Shit is cash. We spent the day exploring and plinking birds with 22s. By nightfall, we set a camp in one of the empty warehouses. We go outside, set up a campfire, and start making stew. All of a sudden, we hear the loudest and weirdest roar I've ever heard. We all shit ourselves, grab our rifles, and stare into the darkness. Something is moving about 100 meters out. We hear it rushing through the woods into the facility area, and we stay out in there, silent, listening. Then it stops, and suddenly it is dead silent all around us, just the stew slowly boiling on the fire. We decide to carry on with making the stew. Next morning, we wake up and start packing. Everybody's making jokes about how we got so scared of some bear, etc. My buddy sees something lurking on the top of the biggest facility building. We try to have a look of what it is, but it's too far away, some 200 meters maybe. It is just standing there with two legs, probably staring at us. The thing is huge, maybe over 7 feet tall. I reach for the binoculars to have a good look on who is trolling us with a ghillie suit. Just as I find the binos, my mates start shouting. I look at the creature, or whatever it was, and it seems to be running via the facility wall like a lizard, very, very fast. By now it is clear it is not human, nor any animal I know of. It disappears behind one big bunker structure. We decide to nope the fuck out of there. We're scared shitless even though it is day. As we are hiking back, we don't take any breaks before nightfall. As the sun sets down, we make a camp and start preparing supper. Everyone's a little tense, and we try to joke around. We decide to do guard duty during the night. My shift is 1 to 3 a.m. Birds are singing like crazy. They do that during the night here. And I managed to see a lone rabbit hopping around our campsite. I would have popped that fucker, but I wanted to let my buddies rest. Suddenly, the bird stops singing and the rabbit stops. Raises its head like it's listening to something. The rabbit nopes out of there very fast like it's running for its life. I feel very uneasy and flick on my flashlight and shine it towards the darkness. I'm hoping to see a glimpse of a fox, etc. That could have explained the strange behavior of the other animals, but the forest around us seems empty. Just as I'm putting the light out, I see something move back behind the bushes around 100 meters away. It was something big. I shine the light directly at the bushes and try to get a look through my 10-22S scope. I managed to see something moving there, and I believe I saw a pair of yellowish eyes. Then it stands up. I don't know to this day what the fuck it was, but it was hairy looking, very dark, and had a face. The face of lighter color, and there were 2 yellow eyes. The thing was around 7 feet tall, somewhat human-shaped. Although I didn't get a very clear look with my shit-tier flashlight, I was 100% sure that the thing wasn't human, so I started panicking, raised my gun, and lit that fucker up. I emptied the whole 20-50-yard Butler Creek mag in about 3 seconds. I didn't even aim. My buddies woke up and started shouting, and it was all chaos for half a minute. I tried to tell them what had happened as fast as I could. Having dropped my flashlight, I didn't know if the creature had been hit or if it was even there anymore. One of my buddies picked up the light and directed it at the direction I was pointing my gun at. And there it was. Just standing. Suddenly, the thing just kind of falls down and starts slithering at us, making no noise at all. We start screaming, grab our packs and guns, and start noping out of there. We must have ran like 10 kilometers straight up before taking a break. All of us were shaking. We didn't share a word. We walked the rest of the way to the public campground in DEFCON 1, weapons ready and listening to every crack. I've never been as happy as I was when I saw some German tourists grilling sausages by their RV. They were all like, what the fuck, when we exited the woods with guns in low ready stance. We said nothing, walked to our car, and drove away, breaking pretty much every speed limit on the way. We talked about the thing on the way home. None of us knew what it was, but everyone had seen it, and everyone was convinced that it was not a human nor any animal of any sort. We decided to stay away from the woods for a while. Problem is that wildlife around here is scared of people, even children. There hasn't been one bear sighting in over 80 years. Last summer, we decided to be tough guys and find out what the hell that thing was. This time, we would go with 3 ATVs in case we had to bail out fast. We took our cameras, 3 .308s and 1 1276 with slugs. There were 4 of us, by the way. Load of survival gear, and one of my buddies managed to get a Gen 2 NV camera. We also had 7 pipe bombs, black powder, and 2-inch iron tubing with caps at the end plus visco tubes in case shit got out of hand. Yeah, it was kind of lame fake operator tier shit, but we thought we would all get famous and shit if we actually killed it or got footage of it. Anyways, we entered the woods with our gear and headed for the facility. Again, at the facility, everything looked normal and birds are singing again. No sign of anything abnormal. We decided to map the surrounding area and look for anything suspicious. Nothing was found. We make camp at the very same warehouse as we did the last time. Night falls and everything is still normal. We have guard shifts during the night, but nothing happens. The next day, we start exploring the woods area around the facility. We find a peculiar pile of dead trees. It looked like someone had hauled them there. We take a closer look. The trees are arranged in a fashion similar to a huge bird's nest. In the middle of the nest, there is a half-rotten moose carcass and a shitload of different animal bones. We start quietly noping back to our campsite. We park our ATVs next to the warehouse we keep our camp in. We enter the camp warehouse and see our camping gear all torn up, the somewhat expensive cameras smashed to against the floor, food taken, and sleeping bags torn to pieces. Fuck. We take everything we could in like a minute and start driving the hell out of Dodge. It's evening by the time we get back to the public campground. A police officer stops us by the gate and checks our gun permits. Then the officer proceeds by asking whether we wanted to volunteer for a search operation. Our ATVs would be much appreciated. Some hiker had apparently gone missing in the nearby forest, 20 kilometers from the facility site. We look at each other and shake our heads. One of my buddies quickly says something about being late. We drive out of there. The dude who went missing was never found. We decided that we wouldn't go in a woodsing in that part of the country anymore. Time for the spooky forest thread. Alright, I'll start with a story from my life. Be me, 20 years old, still with parents because poor, means I have to travel with them. Time to visit family in that really rural southern part of the world, called Tennessee. Fucking backwoods as fuck, man. Not inbred, but these people are like 2 seconds away from donning triple K mass or something. Holy shit. But family get together means we have to hang out. Decent people when you get to know them. Somehow group up with 3 cousins and a friend from out of town. Call them Eddie, Garrett, Austin, and Trent. These are the names of people I know / related to, but not in the right configuration. I'm not great at making up names. We sneak off with a 6-pack my grandpa left out. Good man, but terribly unobservant. Find a clearing a few minutes out, maybe an hour, fuck, I don't know. Adrenaline kills my sense of time. Garrett, the local cousin in these here parts, seems really nervous, older than me, but he keeps whimpering every time we push forward. He carries an old rifle from like the old days when they hunted for a living. Eddie and Austin are keeping him cool, telling him we'll only be out here for a bit. Light up a small lamp. We're all getting a little tipsy, but not drunk. I have like half a can and call it good. Still don't have a taste for alcohol, I guess. Garrett suddenly says, "We shouldn't be here." Well, no shit, we stole beer from our hick grandpa. No, man. We really shouldn't be here. We should leave. We debate arguing. I'm digging the atmosphere. Suddenly, it gets really fucking cold. We put on jackets we dragged along, but holy fuck, man, is it cold. We really shouldn't be here, guys. We have to leave. Austin laughs and Trent grunts. Lamp flickers as a bug bumps it. Big ass bugs and cold wind. Fuck this place. Garrett, now super pissed, picks up Austin and basically stands him up like a good little soldier. We're leaving. Except he's not telling us. He's not even looking at us. He's yelling behind Trent. Trent and I are trying to figure out what the fuck we're doing since we're about to reenact Hatfields and the fucking McCoys in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. Suddenly, Garrett picks up his gun and aims at Trent. Austin drops like a rock. Trent is scared shitless. I'm wondering what the fuck I'm going to say to the cops about all this. We're leaving, ain't we, fellas? Trent slowly turns around out of curiosity. I swear I've never seen a look as terrified as the one on Trent's face. Austin sees Trent, looks at me. I stare back, too chicken shit to see what's going on behind Trent. Trent suddenly sprints past Garrett, who keeps aiming his gun at whatever the fuck is back there. Ain't on. Austin, don't move until I tell you, but when I say it, run like an N-word in a hen house. At this point, too scared to call out the bullshit, just dumbly nod my head. Try to sneak a peek. Ain't on, don't move. Garrett quickly moves, picks up lantern by hooking it up with the muzzle. We're leaving now. We don't want any trouble. We didn't mean anything by it. Something fucking moves in the bushes. Cold gets colder, literally a second from pissing myself. Garrett stops breathing for a moment. Lantern swings gently. Run. I'm not a fast man. Tonight, I was fucking Usain Bolt. Austin is like 5 feet from me. I can hear him crying. I'm crying too. I hear 3 gunshots, one every few seconds. And then the scream. You know, as I'm typing this, I realize I'm actually tearing up. This shit is not a fucking joke, but it feels better to write it down than just bottle it up. Anyways, have you ever heard a coyote yelp? They sound like they're sort of young kids crying and yelling. I grew up with coyotes in the backyard. This did not sound like a coyote. It was higher pitched, higher than a coyote, and it was right fucking behind us. Austin and I don't even look at each other. We just keep running, finally clearing the trees and entering the meadows near a creek. Garrett appears behind us, rifle slung over his shoulder, and he's shouting to keep running. The scream gets louder, but not like in volume. It's getting closer. Garrett tells us to keep going. We're almost across the line. He full stops and takes another shot before moving again. Oh god, this is how we die. Suddenly, more fucking screams. They are everywhere. We see an old fence not more than 30 yards away. Austin fucking leaps that shit like a gymnast. I'm like a few seconds behind him, land on my back and see stars. Garrett leaps over and takes aim again, completely out of breath. We're on our side, fuck off. Screaming literally stops. There's no fucking crickets or shit to fill the void. Just 3 adult men crying like bitches. Austin on his knees, fairly certain he just vomited. I'm not even here anymore. Garrett, where's the fucking lantern? Garrett keeps his gun up, but his knees are shaking. Garrett whispers back. In the trees. We all look up and see the tree line. Sure enough, lantern is sitting in trees at the edge of the meadows. There's something standing near the trees. It's way too fucking tall. It doesn't really move, just jitters back and forth, like someone cut out the in-between frames of an animation. It moves back and forth across the trees. The light blocks out the details, which was fine by me. It turns and sort of hovers across the ground. Its knees are fucking backwards. Holy shit. Garrett is heaving now. His breath is ragged, but he seems to be okay. Garrett, what the fuck? Shut up! I'll admit it. I'm full on sobbing now, but I'm so cried out I can't actually make tears, just blubber in the corner. We're on our side, fuckers. You know the rules. Another one appears from the woods and starts to jitter. Garrett aims and shoots again. I feel my ears ring for a second. The figures fucking freak out and rush back and forth across the tree lines, falling in and out of sight. For a second, I think I see 3 shapes moving around, but I don't care. I just want this shit to stop. The light in the tree flickers and Garrett curses. When the light goes out, run as fast as you can and scream and holler for Grandpa. Don't even stop if I tell you. Austin doesn't even argue. I'm nodding and turning to stare at the trees. The light flickers again, but comes back. The shapes stop moving. Fuck, they got bigger. No, they're closer. The light flickers. I expect them to be bigger again, but the light doesn't come back on and we fucking book it. Austin takes the lead, rushes into the forest behind us, screaming for Grandpa. Garrett doesn't even hold the rifle for a shot anymore. He's just running like we are. We hear the screams again, but they're getting closer. Oh god, they're closer. Suddenly, lights, fucking lights everywhere. The screams stop. Grandpa's like 50 yards away with my dad and like 3 distant uncles and some black dude in a sweatshirt. They all have guns. What the fuck? Garrett and Austin fucking slide to the ground in front of Grandpa. I don't give a fuck and just crash into my dad, who just sorts of hugs me for a second as I keep crying. Garrett is saying a bunch of things, but he's saying it so fast I can't understand him with his accent anymore. Grandpa and one of my uncles just nod. Where's your friend? Trent ran past us. Didn't he reach you? Grandpa grabs me and Garrett. Austin is curled up, weeping on the ground. Take him to the house. Hide him in the guest bedroom with no windows. Then see what he looks like. I fucking want to go home, or to whatever the fuck counts for home. Grandpa says I need to go with them. Says Garrett has a good gun. We walk through the woods again. Have to admit, feels a lot safer with all the guns. The black guy whispers something to Grandpa. My dad keeps marching, hand on my shoulder. Garrett starts calling out for Trent. Tells me to start calling too. We keep calling out. The black guy says something to Grandpa again. We reach the fence again. Exact same spot. Vomit still on ground where Austin was. Grandpa waves flashlight around, illuminates the meadows. Uncles are doing the same. Suddenly, shape darts out of the tree line, crying and huffing. It's Trent. He stops a few feet from the fence and falls on his knees. He's crying just like me. Grandpa and Uncle's totally quiet. Garrett and I don't move. I thought I lost you guys back there at the campsite. I'm scared because nobody's saying anything. Garrett talks first. Where did you go, Trent? I got lost ahead of you. Got turned around, I guess. Grandpa leans in and whispers something into the black guy's ear. He nods. Dad tightens grip on my shoulder. Trent looks confused. Aren't you guys gonna help? Grandpa moves his gun a bit. Help with what? Help me get over there. The fence is tall and I'm tired. Grandpa and my uncles slowly lift their guns. What do you mean? You look fine. Haha, funny guys, seriously, let me in. Grandpa is deathly serious now. I have never felt so scared of a man. Trent looks nervous, almost antsy now. Keeps looking back at the tree line. I feel like something was off, obviously, but I'm too fucking scared and stupid to figure out what it is. Help me over the fence. The black guy talks up. Come over here, kid. Trent fucking stops and glares at the black guy. Not you. You can't. It's not your property. Grandpa starts to raise the gun now. My dad tightens his grip. He's a friend of the family. He's not the owner. It's rude. Trent was invited to the reunion. Trent is still on his knees, but he feels like he's just waiting to pounce. You know that feeling of superiority you get when you stand over someone on their knees? I wasn't feeling that. Not one bit. At this moment, I realized what seemed so weird about Trent. He wasn't fucking breathing. Trent is now staring daggers at Grandpa. Uncles are training their guns on Grandpa. The black guy is just holding the flashlight on Trent's face. My dad whispers something into the ear along the lines of, Trent will be fine. Grandpa shoots the gun into the air, just like Garrett did, and then waits for the shot to stop ringing out. You aren't invited. This is our side. You know the rules. Grandpa and my uncles slowly start to back away, Garrett and my dad guiding me back. The black guy keeps the flashlight on Trent and moves in time with my grandpa, and one of my uncles lags behind. Nods to Grandpa and keeps pointing at Trent while we back away. The black guy is slowly moving. I shouldn't fucking look. I shouldn't fucking look. I fucking look. The light is still trained on Trent, but Trent is moving to the tree line. He's moving to the trees like he's a puppet being dragged back. I wanted to scream, but it's caught in my throat, and my father grabs my head and turns it forward. Trent will be fine, Anon. The screams start back up, but they're distant. Garrett looks over his shoulder, but Grandpa keeps marching. We make it to the house. The party is dying down. I head inside. I'm basically numb now. I hear Austin crying from one of the rooms. Dad takes me inside, lays me down, and tucks me in for the first time since I was 10. The 20-year-old in me is indignant. The terrified little shit I am doesn't care. I spent the rest of the night staring at a wall before falling asleep to the sound of gunshots and far-off screaming. I wake up the next day. Grandpa is sitting at a table with most of the extended family, smoking and reading. Garrett is playing with some of the younger cousins. Austin is watching television. Dad hands me some eggs and a piece of toast. Smiles at me like nothing fucking happens. Garrett sees me, smiles, and motions me over. Trent went home this morning. He's okay. Nothing is fucking okay. Who the fuck said we were okay? What the fucking fuck happened? Garrett gives me a look and quietly states, as matter of a factly as possible. Last night didn't happen. Trent is okay. Drop it. I found out later Trent had been found by some neighbors on the road. He apparently woke up in the brush and booked it home. He was convinced he was hungover, and that explained all the bruises he found on his back and neck. I only asked my grandpa what happened once. He just said that he's had trouble with the people on the nearby land. They keep trying to get onto his property. I asked why they hadn't taken it. He looked right fucking at me and said, I haven't invited them in, Anon. That's why. He wouldn't answer anything after that, just said, not a problem to everything. It's been 3 years since then. I had various visits to family that ended with similar results, but nothing has ever come close to the fear I felt that night. Part of me wants to look it up and see what the fuck those things are. Another part is desperately repressing that urge. I would say was the closest I ever got to a skinwalker incident, but I can never figure out what the fuck was with the side thing. Anyone feel like sharing? Feels good to talk about this shit with new people. And all right, guys, that wraps up some horrifying 4chan stories. I really enjoyed that last story. It was really great. Gave me goosebumps towards the end with that last kind of statement. That was really good. I really like those stories, all these stories. Comment down below if you'd like to see more of these 4chan stories in the future. Would you like these videos to be shorter, longer, somewhere in the middle like this one? Well, this one's an hour, so it's definitely longer, but would you like to see an hour and a half, 2 hour, 3 hour maybe if you guys are lucky? But yeah, comment down below if you'd like to see 10 to 30 minute videos, but you guys are for real the best. Thank you so much for watching the videos. You guys are the best. And thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys next time. See ya.